The morning mist clung to the forest floor as Rusty the Fox lifted his nose, sniffing the cool, damp air. A sweet, sugary scent drifted on the breeze, pulling him toward the unknown. His paws moved silently over the moss until he reached a weathered wooden fence. Through a narrow gap, a hidden paradise awaited. He squeezed his slender body through the wood, emerging into a lush orchard that seemed to glow under the sunlight. Rows of trees stood tall, their branches heavy with the weight of golden apples and deep purple grapes. The air was thick with the smell of ripeness. Rusty's eyes widened at the sight of such abundance. He took a single grape, the skin bursting with sweetness as he swallowed. It was the best thing he had ever tasted, and in that moment, the seeds of greed began to take root in his hungry heart. Rusty ate until his belly felt tight, but the sight of more fruit fueled a frantic desire. "I must have it all," he thought, his eyes darting from tree to tree. He spotted a discarded burlap sack near an old oak and dragged it toward the apple trees. With feverish movements, he began stuffing the sack with the finest fruit he could reach. He didn't stop there. He piled heavy clusters of grapes onto his back, their juices staining his fur. Finally, he gripped a large bunch of berries in his teeth, his mouth overflowing. He was a mountain of stolen treasure, barely able to see over the pile he had created. He convinced himself that this was the only way to ensure he would never be hungry again, ignoring the way his muscles began to ache under the impossible weight of his own ambition. He turned to leave, but his legs buckled instantly. The ground felt like sinking sand. Every step was a battle against gravity. He took one step, then two, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Suddenly, a thick, gnarled tree root caught his front paw. Time seemed to slow down as Rusty tumbled forward. The burlap sack hit the ground and tore open with a sharp rip. Apples bounced and scattered across the grass like rolling stones. The grapes on his back slid into the dark dirt, and the berries in his mouth were crushed into a useless purple mush under his own weight. In an instant, his mountain of food had become a wasteland of waste. He lay there in the middle of the orchard, surrounded by the ruins of his greed, his heart hammering against his ribs in the sudden silence of the afternoon. A sharp, aggressive bark shattered the peace. It was close. Rusty scrambled to get up, but his legs were tangled in the shredded remains of the empty burlap sack. The barking grew louder, accompanied by the heavy thud of boots on the soil. "Go, move," he panicked, kicking wildly at the fabric until his paws were free. He didn't look back at the scattered fruit. He sprinted toward the fence, his heart racing faster than his feet. Just as he reached the narrow gap, a shadow loomed over him. A heavy shovel slammed into the ground inches behind his tail, sending a spray of dirt into the air. He squeezed through the wood, feeling the splinters brush his fur, and didn't stop running until the orchard was a distant memory. He collapsed under a pine tree deep in the woods, trembling. His stomach gave a long, hollow growl. He had risked everything, and now he had absolutely nothing left. The next morning, Rusty returned to the edge of the orchard, but he did not enter with a sack. He walked calmly to a single bush and picked exactly 3 berries. He ate them slowly, savoring the flavor rather than the quantity. As he turned to leave, a wise old owl perched on a low branch blinked down at him. "Why leave so soon, little fox?" the owl hooted. "The trees are still full." Rusty looked at the spot where he had fallen the day before, then looked at his empty paws. He shook his head softly. "I have had enough," he replied. He realized that the weight of the world is too heavy for one fox to carry, and that a full heart is better than a full stomach if the price is one's freedom. He walked away with his head held high, leaving the rest of the orchard behind. From that day on, Rusty only took what he could carry in his mouth. He began placing extra berries on a flat rock for the squirrels and the birds who couldn't reach the high branches. To his surprise, other animals began to walk beside him on the forest paths, sharing stories and warmth. He was no longer a lone thief, but a friend. Rusty looked at his companions and smiled, realizing a profound truth. By giving away what he didn't need, he had gained something far more valuable. He was never truly hungry again, for his spirit was finally fed.